So, the TED Talk this week was about expanding perception. One of the first things she talked about was connection and how connection was pretty much a requirement or connection, which she said was our meaning and our purpose. And honestly, I couldn't agree more. Um, in my life, I've been to pretty much most places I've wanted to go. I've been on the West Coast, been to Florida. I lived for a month in Italy, and pretty much everything I came back to, no matter what I did, it didn't really matter unless I had the people there to do it with. You could be looking out over the best ocean and or the Mediterranean Sea, and if you aren't sitting by anyone you want to be sitting there with, it it's definitely not as enjoyable. And also, I think the point she hit on with vulnerability is a huge one. I believe everybody is born with an ego, and I don't really think you can get rid of it, as some Buddhist religions claim, but it's more so just learning how to handle it in a healthy fashion. So I think we need to be vulnerable in all times with our ego and dealing with other people when it comes to being right in a conversation or knowing certain information. I think a lot of our lack of vulnerability comes from the ego, and our big egos in the West come from the Western philosophy of individualism. We got told our whole time growing up that we are special, we are individuals, and everything, like she was saying with the kids, everything is perfect. When in reality, we are way more similar than most people are willing to admit. We share similar struggles. We share the feelings of triumph. We're really blocked off to really the Eastern philosophy of connectiveness, and I think we could use a little more, and it would help us be vulnerable. Um, she also talked about people who were sad didn't feel that they were worthy. And I feel like a big issue with this is the people who feel that way don't have really a growth mindset. If you're looking at yourself as a final product, it's very easy to say that you might not be worthy, you might not be good enough for certain things. But if you look at yourself in a growth mindset and you aren't focused on who you are today, but who you're going to be, how worthy you will be, and you just work at it little by little, before you know it, anything's possible for you, and you'll feel a lot more worthy. Um, also, also, I think a lot of people are just really too hard on themselves. They're way too critical on being worthy, way more than they would be to anybody else. I think a lot of people forget that they need to be their own best friend and you need to take care of yourself before other people, and that means mentally too. If your inner dialogue is just you ripping on yourself, you are not going to feel worthy. You need to speak from a place in which growth is possible. Also, I think it was a really good point. I've never heard anyone articulate it like that, but the fact that people numb feelings and it results of them numbing it on both ends. I personally am from a blue collar suburb in Chicago, and that's how most people operate. And I never thought about it that way, but it's definitely obvious that they numb themselves from the negative things, but then you can totally tell that they don't really they don't really enjoy any of the good things either, just because they're walking through life eyes closed. When it comes to politics, I think it's, especially from the social side of things, I think it's very hard from anybody to really get understand the emotions of others, because nobody in politics really has vulnerability. Everybody is closed off. They know they can't say anything wrong. we are very unforgiving of many people. I just feel that when you have to act in that manner where you can't mess up and you can't be vulnerable, or it's very hard, like you said, to experience those positive emotions and see what it's like for people who are different than you, because you aren't really having many authentic conversations. Also, I think it's a big issue that people don't voice their opinion because they don't feel worthy. I think there's a lot of smart people out there who look at the TV screen and say, "Oh, I don't know all of that," or "I can't speak that clearly." And they aren't voicing their opinions or voting because of it. And I think if people worked on feeling more vulnerable and that they're just doing the best that they're doing in the current moment, I think they would be way more willing to voice their opinions.